In American literature, seekers of the American dream strive for what it began as, a want for land, financial stability, and for the ability to provide for a family. The American dream evolved as its country did, arguably recently into the want for a college education that would provide a job with enough financial stability to provide a college education for one's children, and so on and so forth. As the country continues to evolve amidst fast-paced technological advancement that can reduce or replace jobs, what possibilities exist to keep America's hardworking, ambitious nature alive while incorporating the changes we see within the workforce? To consider possibilities for the future, it is necessary to look at how important work truly is to humanity. It's arguable that humanity requires work to provide meaning and even happiness in their lives. For example, students at Summerhill School in the United Kingdom are not required to attend class, but typically, despite being school children who value playtime, they will attend them classes. The school performs fairly well, as evaluated by a third-party inspectorate in 2016. The students value their learning, and therefore, they attend their classes. Similarly in idea, Albert Camus's essay on the myth of Sisyphus argues that not only does work give meaning, but provides happiness. Camus argues that a Greek figure being punished eternally by the gods, Sisyphus, must be imagined as happy in his struggle. The gods force Sisyphus to push a boulder up a mountain for the rest of eternity, which rolls down each time he reaches the peak. In Camus's opinion, the struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart, arguing that Sisyphus finds happiness in his eternal work. The idea that work provides meaning and happiness can also be seen throughout American history, as in the popularity of the American dream, and even in instances like World War II global mobilization, providing meaning for work and pulling the Americans out of the Great Depression. Conversely, it's also arguable that humanity finds more meaning in leisure time than in work time. 95% of human history was spent in hunter-gatherer societies, which modern cultures often deem unsophisticated, but truly they encountered much more leisure time. These societies achieved what was necessary for survival and spent the rest of their days with family or other activities. Some religions also emphasize decreasing meaning of work as a path to happiness. Buddhism highlights that desire is the root of all suffering, and often seeking an occupation based on wealth can increase this suffering. Author and 25-year Zen student Alan Hunt Badner argues that making money cannot be value-free or based on self-benefit. He expresses that continuing to decrease desire for wealth increases chances of happiness by removing finance from the picture of occupation. Essentially, the same idea is expressed in asking if humanity needs work time or needs leisure time. If one finds meaning within the work they do, not only will it be important to them, but they will be happy to perform it. So how can this idea be utilized in the future? I propose that removing currency and salary from America with the idea in mind that work with meaning will be performed happily amidst already quickly advancing technological environment is a possibility for the future. Technology has already been predicted by researchers at Oxford University to be able to remove half of all US jobs in the next 2 decades. We've seen automated car industry, cash registers that are mechanized, and even the printing of 3D houses. Instead of fearing this job loss, it can be utilized to decrease degrading, menial, or low-paying jobs from our job market, leaving instead careers based majorly in continuing technological advancement and perhaps expression of art. Because this point of topic discusses things that are highly theoretic, it's more difficult to say how the system can work and more reasonable to explain why it could work. For example, in regards to education, the hope is that those who find teaching meaningful will teach. Teaching would highly likely evolve as the job market does, with emphasis on STEM and personal expression. Derek Thompson states in The Atlantic that a hypothetical future where direct labor ends for the majority of the population and where we live lives of relative ease and leisure would continually usher itself in, with education having an emphasis on maintaining, improving, upgrading, and redirecting machines, or programming them to do so themselves. Similarly, in discussion of how supplies like food would be distributed, the goal is that those who appreciate farming, in whatever way farming still exists in the technological advancement, will farm. The actual distribution of these supplies is where questions of America's competitiveness being continued would come into play. Would we still have branding? Would foods require more to purchase them? Perhaps a center could be employed where products could be brought in and measured in a sense of their value. Things like food could be measured on color and taste and weight. Other questions would have to be considered as well, like would art forms be considered supplies that these supply centers could utilize, and how would those be purchased? Dozens of other complications and questions could exist, with different perspectives for all the answers, as is typical in all discussion of societal types. In conclusion, because of humanity's inherent desire for work that holds meaning, coupled with this appreciation that we see for leisure time and activity, humanity could operate without currency. How a country or world would operate without currency and salary in any realm, such as education, crime, etc., is much more difficult to analyze. Concepts like greed would likely still exist, with material possessions instead of the currency itself. And there will always be those who do not have the capacity to continue in this technological advancement or teach or self-express, as the careers that would be left behind would highly major in. Despite this uncertainty, it's important to consider these possibilities as they becomes more and more real, that we will see job loss continue into the future. So this has been Removing Currency by Margo Milanowski, and these are my sources.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a question. How did your research question evolve as you moved through the research process? Did your research go in a different direction than you originally planned or hypothesized?
I think definitely. I even said it in my presentation. When I started, I kind of wanted to figure out how it would all work, but that's not that easy to research. And what I ended up doing was thinking of it in a more theoretic way of why it could work, instead of actually making up a society for the future. I was just explaining the reasonings of the past that proved that it could work.
Can you maybe I'm going to ask this kind of generally, and give you some a little bit of how it applies. How did the EU use the conclusions and questions of others, maybe those that you found in your research, to advance your own, like maybe ideas they said or promoted, and how did that guide you in your thinking, I guess?
I think that the opinions of others, since I was looking at two totally different ends of the spectrum, like the opinions of Summerhill, they said these students, they need work, they need education, so they will come to school. But obviously, the opinions of people within researching hunter-gatherer societies would say the opposite, that hunter-gatherers did everything just fine without a set type of work, and they succeeded just as well. And looking at literally just the opposite ends of the spectrum made me search for like a statement that was all-encompassing, that